right, so this is the final week. We're going to go over some FRQs this week. These FRQs are going to cross multiple units, so that's going to be a lot more realistic to what we have been covering. I mean, what it's going to be a lot more realistic to what's going to be in the test. You're probably not going to find any like single FRQ. I mean, a single unit FRQs. You're going to find FRQs that span multiple units. But today means 4 more days of lessons. Getting it really close already, and 17 more days until summer. That's including Saturdays, Sundays. So finish this week, finish next week, and then 1 more week to go, and we're done. So you're due now, guys. Again, pull out some paper, pull out a pen, or I think the most preferable thing would be to open up a Microsoft Word document. That way you can have that running side by side while you're taking your test. You can find your notes a lot faster if you're doing a Microsoft Word document. And also, the purpose of this live stream is to allow you guys time in the moment to ask me whatever questions you have. So you can ask me. If you want, you can keep yourself on mute when you find, if you have a question at all, just go ahead and stop me, ask me a question, what we're here for. Very objective. You're going to be able to dissect, release pre-response questions, and you're going to prove mastery over the 2 stimuli FRQs. So that's going to be like your first question that you'll be getting on the AP exam, which you'll see is going to have 2 images like this. So the first thing that I'm going to have you do, and those of you guys who have gone to my AP tutorials, this is going to be very familiar with you guys. So that's how we're going to run the rest of this week. Doing this practice. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and look at this stimuli. I'm not showing you guys the questions, I'm just showing you the image first. And just by looking at this image, what can we get away from this? Need somebody. What can we tell? What stage are these countries in? Country A, we've got country B. Come on, somebody. Great. Then let
Country
me
A
just see. Yes?
is country A is stage 2.
Good job. Country A is a stage 2. So we can note that country A is a stage 2. Can somebody tell me what country B is?
Stage 4.
Yeah, that would be a stage 4 country. What else can we tell? Just by looking at this, we can see that this country right here has a very large base. It's got a very a very narrow peak. This doesn't even look like a pyramid right here. It looks like they're having less children than this generation had, right? Like this generation over here is the generation that's having the children, and they're having less children than what their parents had. Another thing that we can see is that, again, very narrow peak. So not too many people make it to 75. And then we have a much wider peak, specifically for the females. A lot of these people do make it to 75, right? So some things that we can already assume from just looking at this is that this country right here spends a lot of money or a lot of time on the youth-dependent population. Now remember, the youth-dependent population is anybody that's under 15. So that'd be 0 to 14 years old. These first 3 bars. That's a lot. Oh, that's a very, very large chunk of people. So they definitely have to spend time and money on the children. They don't have to really worry about spending too much time or money on the elderly population. Now, if you look at this one, you see that they have less children than are available adults. But you see that this side on the female section of this population pyramid peaks out almost as far as the amount of women that are 34. And as for the men, it'll peak out pretty far also. I mean, relatively further than this country over here. So what you can see is that though they obviously are spending money on social programs for the youth, say like daycare services or government programs that give stipends to families for having children. But they're also spending some money, quite a bit of money, on the elderly dependents. So the elderly dependents, you need to pay for nursing homes, you need to pay for Social Security, lots of government programs that you need to pay for, like out of your paycheck, like when it's taxed. That's what a lot of this money would go for. Another thing that we can see is, hey, this is probably going to be pretty bad in the future because you have a larger population here than you do here. So if they continue at this trend, if it gets any smaller, or even if it stays as small as it is down here at this base, um, in the future, they bump it forward 30 years, where these kids, the ones that are 0 to 4, are over here at the 30 to 34. That means that this bulge that you see, like this rounder part, is going to be higher up here. That means you're going to have much more people in the elderly dependent. You're going to have a very small working population. We can visualize this, correct? What I'm trying to say is that you're going to have a large base up here, and then it's just going to be really narrow if it continues at this rate. And this would be a really bad thing because then these are the people in relatively around this section. It's below 55, so from right here to right here. This is the working population. And if this population is too small in relation to this section and this section, then there's going to be some problems. How they can solve that is advocating for more lax laws on immigration. Like if you can bring in immigrants, that would be a really good thing because you can bring in immigrants that are already adults. You wouldn't have to spend money on child care. You wouldn't have to spend time and money waiting for these children to be born, grow up, and then become skilled workers. These people would come in as adults and they would already be able to work. You can tax their paychecks. That way it can go for the youth and the elderly. And then right here, in this country right here, we see a very large base. So that means in the future, they're going to be really, really well set because they're going to have a very large working age population. And there's going to be lots of people to support the elderly and the youth dependents. So, as one of you guys said, country A is a stage 2. Country B looks like it's going to be stage 4. It could be a stage 5, maybe. Country A evidently has a very high birth rate. Country B has a very low birth rate. Country B also seems to have a very high life expectancy. Note the large peak. And then country B must spend a lot on social programs for the youth dependents and the elderly dependents. And then country A may need help from, okay, no, when I typed that, I meant country B. So country B over here might need help from immigration in the future, as it seems that there will be a very high elderly dependent ratio and a very small working age group. Does this make sense to everybody so far? Are there any questions at this point? All right, then we'll move on. So question A. Question A is to explain the demographic characteristics of each country above, or in our case, to the right, with respect to the demographic transition model. Does everybody here remember how many stages are in the demographic transition model?
5.
There are 5 stages, yes. Are there many countries that are in stage 1?
No.
No. There are actually no full countries that are completely stage 1. Maybe regions of a country you can classify as a stage 1, but no full country in this world today is a stage 1 anymore. So it's going to be very unlikely that you will ever see a population pyramid in an FRQ that's going to be indicating stage 1. So don't mess yourselves up by thinking like, oh, it looks really undeveloped. It's got to be stage 1, because no. In today's world, very, very, very undeveloped would be stage 2. So one of you guys already answered this. Can somebody again tell me what is country A in the demographic transition model? Well, the answer was literally given out.
Stage 2?
This is stage 2. Good job. This is stage 2. Again, this is evident from the very large From this is evident from having a very high birth rate and from having a low life expectancy. And then what can we tell from this one again? What stage is it?
4.
Anybody? This is stage 4. You could also say stage 5, maybe. Um, and this again is evident from having a very low birth rate, very, very low birth rate. That's why we would say it could be stage 5 because it looks like it has an exceptionally low birth rate. That's the second smallest demographic that we've got in this whole population pyramid, the 0 to 4 group. And they've also got a very high life expectancy. So we can assume that it has a very high life. We can assume that it's a stage 4, stage 5 because of the high life expectancy, the low birth rate. It seems that women are lasting very long time, much longer than men, at least. If you have this many women over here in the 75 plus age group, I mean, just imagine what it would be if there was like a demographic for 75 to 80, 80 to 85. You'd probably see women come all the way up here. So we can assume that women are also probably educated at this point. Women are probably getting careers at this point. Um, Also noting that the women are probably waiting to have children until a little bit later in life because there's a we can tell that there isn't a high infant mortality rate. We can tell that there are a lot of women. So you can put that together and say that women are having children later in life. So what this rubric would have said was you must mention that it was a stage 2. Second or early expanding stage, you could also say, and elaborate briefly. So you couldn't just simply say that this is stage 2 and this is stage 4. You needed to also say, you needed to elaborate on its characteristics, such as high birth rate, falling death rate, youthful population. Very evident that there's a youthful population here. Like the majority of this country's population is below 30. It is not acceptable to suggest that this is a stage 1. That would have lost 2 points if you would have said stage 1, or it's also unacceptable to say stage 3. This is very evidently not stage 3. Now for country B. So for country B, you must have had mentioned that this was a stage 4 country. Fourth, final, or low stationary stage would also be acceptable. And elaborate briefly about its characteristics, such as low birth rate, as we pointed out, low death rate, as we can assume, and an aging population. So I didn't mention that when I was going over it, but we can definitely see that there is an aging population. Whereas you can see here that the majority of this country's population lands under 30 years old. You can see that if you average out all of these years, you can probably see something like in the mid 50s for their average age in this population. It is acceptable, however, to assume that it could be a stage 5 country, as again, very small base, low birth rate would indicate it could be a stage 5. Now we're going to move on to question B. So for question B, our question is asking us to discuss. So discuss would be our command verb. And then it says 1. So we only need to do one thing. Discuss one positive impact of each. So make sure you talk about both. One positive impact of each country's population structure on its economic development. So we were talking about its economic development. How is its economy going to function in the future? So I already gave you lots of information on what we could expect in the future from country A and country B. Would somebody like to tell me one positive thing, just one positive thing about country A's economic development? So economic development indicates it's in the future because it's developing. Come on, guys. Give you a minute so you guys can think about a response for a positive on both. One minute set. You're about halfway through your time at this point. And that is time. All right, so do I have any volunteers or do you need to call names? Awesome. Andric, go ahead and give us one positive impact on country A's economic development. I know you're there. I just saw that you're there in the chat. So, Andric, go for it.
Hmm.
They have like agriculture. They have crops and all of that.
Okay, we can assume that yeah, maybe they're very largely agriculturalists. So again, we're talking about the economy. So what do you think is going to happen with the economy in the future? Give me something positive about this whole layout that you see right here. Can I have maybe George? George, can you help us here? Come on, George, I know you're there too. George. All right, guys, George has a little bit of stage fright, so we're going to go ahead and give this to Cecilia. Cecilia, can you help us out here? Wasting too much time. We're not going to be able to get through this whole thing.
For future generations, they already have a working age set for them.
Perfect. There you go. They already have a very large future working population. We can tell that these kids are going to age, and it's going to be a very large center. Imagine all of this moving up 30 years, where these 30-year-olds are now the 60-year-olds. We're going to have something out all the way over here. It would look something kind of like this would be what the center would look like, assuming that most of these people actually make it through their infancy. So yeah, exactly what Cecilia said. We're gonna see we already have an established like working population in the future because of the youthful population. Now, can somebody give me a positive right here for country B? And I am going to ask Alicia. Alicia, go ahead and give us a positive impact on country B's future economic development. Okay. Um, let's go ahead and pass it over to Ashley. Ashley, give us one positive thing, just one positive thing about this country's economic development. If you guys don't want to participate, I can just go find another book and start pulling out chapters and have you guys read them again and give you unit quizzes if you'd really like. Or we can do it this way. Okay. So country A, as Cecilia stated, it's going to have an expanding or large workforce. We have a youthful population which can only spark creativity, and receptivity to change. I mean, again, this is the rubric that was posted by College Board, so this is exactly the things that they are looking for. Less need for immigrant labor. So they don't need people to come into their country. Let's say this is um, Somalia in Africa. They don't need people coming into Somalia to support them because they're going to have a very large working population in the future. And there's less need for elder social safety. So, I mean, they don't really have a lot of people. So, I mean, they don't really have a lot of elderly people, so they don't really have to worry about paying for caring for the elderly. Now, if we're looking at country B, which had every one of you guys stumped, we can very obviously tell since it is a stage 4. there are some assumptions that could be made. So one is, of course, people are a lot more educated. The people are significantly more educated. Most of these people probably know how to read. They have a low youth dependency ratio. They're not spending too much money on the youth because there aren't many youthful. There isn't a large youthful population. More women in the compensated workforce. So if you can assume that these people are mostly educated, and we see more women here than we do see men, we can we can tell that these women are probably in the workforce. And by compensated, that just means that they are paid just like everybody else. Tendency to spend discretionary income on needs other than in education. So there are probably people who have enough income to where they can spend they can spend their money on whatever it is that they want. And this is the one that I think was most important and most obvious from here. Might need immigrant labor, which would allow citizens to take higher order jobs. So, I mean, if they bring in immigrant labor, then that means that current citizens might be able to take in higher order jobs, say like college degree jobs. Now, if we look at the final question, we have 8 minutes left in class. And I want to be able to push through this really quickly, so I'm going to give you guys like another 1 minute. Go ahead and look at this question. Question being discuss one negative impact. So exactly the same as the last question. However, this time we're looking at a negative. So can you give me one negative impact from country A and country B's economic development? Your timer starts now, guys. You have 20 seconds left, guys. And 7 minutes left in class, so we got to make this quick. Five seconds. Be ready. All right. So I'm going to give the first one to Matthew. Matthew Brown, go ahead and give me the negative on country
There's a high dependency. Like there's like
A.
a lot of kids that can't work.
Okay, so elaborate a little bit more on that. You're not wrong for sure. Just I want to hear a little bit more on this.
Um, the working class or the working population has to support more people that
Which
can
kind of
work.
people?
The working population.
No, no. So you said that the working population has to support people, but which people does the working population have to support? You're not wrong. You just need a little bit more information.
Um, the people like in the middle class, like middle age.
So this would be the working population right here, Matthew.
See,
This one right here.
see.
So if they, who do they have to support?
What?
Who do they have to support? You're right, but who does that
The
mean?
the people at the top and the bottom.
Okay, so these people at the top, guys, are called the elderly dependent,
See.
and these people down here are called the youth dependent. This is the working population right here. So yes, Matthew's totally right. These people are going to have to spend more time. They're not going to have to spend too much money on supporting the elderly population, but they are going to have to spend a very significant amount of money or time helping this youthful population. Now, Patrick, can you give me a negative on country B? Definitely already discussed it in this session, so Patrick, go for it.
Sorry, what was it?
Patrick, give us one negative impact of country B's population structure on its economic development. We're looking at this one right here, man.
Sorry, honestly, I can't hear you. Can you repeat that one more time? Just one more time. I got you.
Don't worry, you don't have to hear me. It's right here. We're pointing at this one. Come on, Patrick.
Yes.
There will be like how do I explain this? Like a lower amount of like working population like in the future. So like how do I explain this?
Yeah, that's perfect. You're right. Now, why is that a problem?
Because it's
Come on, you got it. But why is it a problem? Why is it a problem that we're gonna have a small working population?
because then like who's gonna build everything, you know? Like
Exactly. Who's gonna do everything?
who's
So,
gonna
I mean,
work and stuff, and the people need to work in that country, you know?
yeah, so we have a narrow working age population. Looks like it would be around right here. So it looks like it's gonna be smaller than their parents' generation. And then this group up here is gonna be about over here, about this wide. So we have more people in the elderly dependent population, and we'll probably have a smaller base. It's going to start looking like an upside down pyramid. Note that it looks like an upside down pyramid at this point. If we move any further into that direction that they're going in, so they're not going to have too many youths to depend on, but they're going to have. I mean, they're going to have a lot of the elderly population to work for, and if this trend continues in this way. Um, so College Board says country A is negative is a very high youth dependency ratio, exactly what Matthew said. So a strain on resources, the environment, or society owing to rapid population growth. So you're going to see that this population is going to explode in the future. Like it's going to be enormous, very similar to the way India or China went. Um, the way they had a very large youthful population and they started implementing child restriction laws. They probably have a low literacy rate for women, assuming that because this is a stage 2 country, and fewer women in the compensated workforce. Now for country B, they're going to have a very high elderly dependent ratio, which is right up here. They're going to have a possible future labor shortage, which would mean that they would need immigration labor coming in the future to help them. I know that the United States would be pushed into a stage 5 if it weren't for our lax labor laws. Um, or immigration laws, because the United States also has we have a pretty low birth rate. We don't have a lot of babies being born. Um, but the thing is, the United States brings in a lot of immigration labor. A lot of immigrants come into the United States, so that is what helps keep the United States as a very youthful population, and a greater need to fund social safety net. So that's again is for the elderly people. They have a large need to fund that. So that is it for today, guys. There is no exit ticket. I probably won't give you one until Friday. If you have any questions, go ahead and send me a message. Are there any questions before I leave?
No.
All right, guys, and it's already 10:40, so that is time. You guys can go for your break.
Bye, sir.
See you.